Hey, yo, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Smart TCG. Today, I'm going to be going over the top 5 decks in the standard format with Stellar Crown. Stellar Crown most recently released, and we've had a couple tournaments with this set being legal. We have plenty coming up as well. So I think it'd be good to go over where I think currently the standard format is sitting. With that being said, if you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And if you're looking for the deck lists as well, those will be down in the description. All right, let's hop right into it. Been around and has seen success for the past couple of months, and it gets even stronger with the addition of Briar. Some of Raging Bolt's most difficult matchups like Charizard and Ancient Box get significantly better with Briar, which boosts this deck's viability in this format. This is going to be the list that I have decided to run and show off today. This is currently where I'm at with Raging Bolt. I feel pretty comfortable with this list, and from my testing, this is where I would be at if I did decide to play this deck to a major tournament. The big change compared to a lot of other lists that I see is I actually play 2 Ultra Ball. A lot of lists don't even play any Ultra Ball. However, I consistently run into problems with Raging Bolt where I'm just not able to find my Pokemon on that first turn, and oftentimes towards the middle of games, and just having more ball search cards has felt very, very good. Raging Bolt, what it loses in matchup spread, it gains in consistency. It doesn't necessarily beat a lot of the top decks very consistently. However, it is able to set up at such a higher rate of consistency than the other top decks in the format that it's able to pick off a ton of games just by, let's say, a Charizard, for example, stumbling for one turn, or a like Terapagos not necessarily finding all the pieces that it needs to take a knockout. It's absolutely incredible at capitalizing on decks missing something, which in a lot of games that happens. Just there's oftentimes sets where a deck doesn't set up perfectly, and Bolt's a deck that is statistically able to set up at a much higher rate, which means that it's able to take advantage of those decks. So it might not necessarily have the best matchup spread overall, but it is able to play Pokemon at a higher rate than other decks, which is a absolutely huge thing in this format, as this format is very, very fast at the moment. So overall, I think Raging Bolt is a solid deck, not necessarily overwhelming in any way. You pretty much get to play the majority of games. You get to take advantage of decks that stumble against you better than pretty much anything else in the format, and I definitely think it has a lot of potential moving forward. It's a good deck. I think it's going to see a lot of play, and I also think it's going to see success. All right, let's hop in number 4. Alrighty, hopping into number 4 here, we have Dragapult. Now, this is going to be the list that Ryuki used to win the Dortmund Regional Championships, and most notably, doesn't have any Pidgeot. That was definitely a big surprise in this list. We see the majority of Dragapult lists that see success have Pidgeot, but this list did not. And after playing some games with it, it actually feels okay. Having things like the Tatsugiri with its ability that allows you to find those supporters that you need, also having the double Rotom as well for that extra consistency too, makes it actually feel okay. I definitely think that Pidgeot is still good in this deck, but I definitely think that you can get away with it for sure. Sparkling Crystal as well is really, really solid, as it pretty much allows you to get the turn to attack off pretty much every single game, which is absolutely huge. The Dusknoir package as well creates these big scenarios where you can pull off 3 or 4 prize turns. Yeah, it's a pretty solid deck. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it. It takes pretty even matchups against a lot of things. I have tested the Zard matchup, and the Zard matchup is not as good as I would like it to be. If you want to really make that matchup stronger, you could add in maybe a TM Devo, but overall, I think that this deck feels pretty balanced. I think that Zard feels a little bit better as a Dusknoir variant, but that doesn't mean this deck is bad. I definitely still think it's very, very solid. You do take decent matchups against a lot of things, and yeah, I think it's pretty good. I definitely expect it to see success moving forward. I just don't know if it's necessarily better than Zard, and it doesn't really feel overpowering in any way, but it doesn't really do anything wrong either. It's just a solid deck. It doesn't do anything exceptionally well, but it doesn't really have any flaws to it. It's a really good deck, and I definitely expect it to see success moving forward. Alrighty, hopping into number 3 here, we have Lugia V-Star. Lugia V-Star is still one of the strongest decks in the format, and Rahul Reddy has been absolutely dominating tournaments with it. This is going to be the list that he most recently used to get 2nd place at the Dortmund Regional Championship. Lugia has been around for almost 2 years now, and it has remained one of the strongest decks in the format. There have been so many different iterations of this deck, and this is one that we finally landed on. as its time in the standard format is beginning to near its end. Here's Lugia here, pretty standard. We got 4 Archeops, 3-3 Lugia V-Star, 2 Lumineon, 1-1 Cinccino. A lot of lists are playing 2-2, some even 3-3. However, I actually think that 1-1 is totally fine as of right now. As we're entering a Dusknoir Briar format, having Cinccino on the board in some matchups can be kind of viewed as a liability, especially towards the end of the game. So I really only think you need a 1-1 line. We got 1 Iron Hands, 1 Blood Moon Ursaluna, 1 Weirdeer as well. Weirdeer is the other card that you can use to take big one-hit KOs, whereas if you had a thicker line of Cinccino, you could potentially cut this card, but I think that, you know, with the 1-1 line, I think you definitely Weirdeer. Very, very powerful card, very good, especially with the legacy energy, creates a lot of problems there. We got 1 Raikou as well. Now, this is a very controversial card in the deck. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's absolutely terrible. I think it's relatively decent. It's really, really good versus the Pidgeot decks in the format, where we see decks like Dragapult Pidgeot are still seeing play. Even though we saw the Dragapult variant without the Pidgeot see success, there still are plenty of variants with Pidgeot that are doing well. We also see Charizard Pidgeot as well. It's also decent sometimes versus the mirror match, you know, being able to knock out a Lugia as it is weak and just, you know, sometimes pops up in certain situations. Also, it gives you an excuse to play the Earthen Vessel as well, which, yes, can get yourself that lightning energy, which can pop up sometimes to be able to attach to Raikou or Iron Hands. But honestly, in most situations, is another way to get rid of the Archeops. One of this deck's biggest issues, and honestly biggest issue, is getting those guys in the discard pile. So having access to Earthen Vessel is really, really nice. It's just another way to get those into the discard pile, which does slightly increase the consistency of the deck. 1 Fezandipiti as well, just for consistency. I really like Fezandipiti because a lot of the times players will try and work around your gift energies, maybe hit you with an unfair stamp, you know, counter catcher play, and just kind of hope that you don't find boss's orders. And having access to Fezandipiti in your deck is really, really nice. Definitely like this card. 1 Squawkabilly and 1 Iron Bundle as well. 4 boss's orders too. Very, very heavy count of this card, but 4 boss makes a lot of sense in this format, as you're just oftentimes trying to gust around certain things in the active so that, you know, you can take those, you know, knockouts with things, you know, like Iron Hands, or like maybe you want to force up a Fezandipiti and then hit them with a Tempest Dive for 220. Boss's Order is just very, very important in this deck, and you want to be able to use it consistently, which is why I think it's really good. 3 Research, 2 Iono, 1 Jock as well. Then we got 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Capturing Aroma, 2 Nest Ball, 1 Earthen Vessel as already stated, and then 2 Mezagoza. Then we got Energies, we got 4 Double Turbo, 4 Gift, 4 Jet, 1 Legacy, 1 Mist, 1 V-Guard, and 1 Light Energy. Overall, I think Lugia is a really, really solid deck in the format. You take decent matchups against pretty much everything except for Iron Thorns. That is your really, really bad matchup, and I think it has the potential to win tournaments. The only thing that is holding it back right now, and it's been the thing that's been holding it back for quite some time, is itself. It just sometimes doesn't get set up. If the deck was able to get turn 2 Archeops every single game, it would arguably be the strongest deck in the format. I think it would definitely be at number 1, but we just haven't been able to figure out a list that is able to do that every single game, which is why it is at number 3. It is pretty much a glass cannon in a lot of ways, but when you get set up and you get everything that you need, the deck feels pretty much unbeatable. Definitely a very, very strong deck, and I expect it to do well moving forward. Alrighty, hopping in number 2 here, we have Terapagos. Terapagos is a brand new archetype from Stellar Crown, and when the set first released, people were testing a lot of different variants of this deck. We saw Terapagos Palkia, we saw Terapagos with, you know, like the heavy healing with things, you know, like Penny and the Buffalon, but then we came across Terapagos with the Dusknoir, and I think that this is the best way to play this deck. Fast and consistent and able to win the game on 3 turns really makes this deck one of the most powerful in the format. We got 4-4 Noctowl. I see a lot of lists choosing to play 3-3. I think 4-4 is stronger and just very, very consistent. You want to be able to use your Noctowls pretty much every single turn. A lot of the times you use 2 Noctowl on the second turn of the game. So if you prize one of them, then you only have 2 to use on that second turn, and then on, you know, the third or fourth turn, you might not have, you know, those cards in your deck can kind of stall out. So having 4, I think, is just super, super important. 3 Terapagos in this list. You can play 4, but I have decided to go up to a 2-2 Pidgeot line just for that, you know, consistency purposes. But I think that 4 Terapagos is also very good. 2-1-2 of the Dusknoir line. Some people don't play the Dusclops, but I think it is pretty good right now. Sometimes you want to be able to put at least 180 damage on the board, and you don't want to have to use 2 rare candies to get there. So, being able to use a Dusknoir with 1 rare candy and then use a Dusclops without, having to use a rare candy can be relatively nice. There are also times on the second turn of the game where you don't actually need a Dusknoir. So just like being able to, go into the Dusclops first, save one of those rare candies, and then go into Dusknoir next turn, and then maybe use a rare candy for a second Dusknoir on that next turn is, pretty good. 2-2 Pidgeot, as I said as well, I think you can definitely get away with 1-1. However, you run into some problems where you prize a piece of this, and then you can definitely stumble, towards the end of the game, as this is a heavy combo-based deck. 2 Fan Rotom as well. Fan Rotom is absolutely insane in this deck. Pretty much reads. You get to set up your board state. Really, really good card. Definitely like having the 2. I know some people are playing 3, but I think you can definitely get away with 2. 1 Blood Moon as well. This card is great towards the end of the game. It can pretty much attack for free, as you can use something like a Dusclops or a Dusknoir to force your opponent down to 1 prize, which means that Blood Moon attacks for 0 energies. Also, a very good card to clean up games versus Raging Bolt. 1 Pheasantipede as well, great to draw cards. Like once again, you are a heavy combo-based deck, right? So you're going to be drawing a bunch of cards, and you're also going to need to hit a lot of cards to be able to, finish off those games. So having the Pheasantipede there definitely makes a lot of sense. Incredibly powerful card. 2 Research, 2 Iono as well. I've been seeing some lists decide not to play a heavy count of draw supporters, but I think they're really, really important for that first and second turn of the game. Yes, after the first and second turn of the game, you're going to be using things like Boss's Orders or something like the Briar to finish off games. However, you got to get to that point first. So I think that's why it's important to play at least some draw supporters. 1 Boss's Orders, 1 Colorist Tenacity. This card is really good for the Iron Thorns matchup. Iron Thorns has been seeing a little bit more play recently, and one of the problems that you can run into in that matchup is you don't get access to Pidgeot, so it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to find your double turbo energies. However, with the Colorist, you'll be able to find your double turbos consistently, which will make that matchup significantly better. 1 Briar as well. I think 1 is fine. I know some people have been playing Pal Pad. However, I really haven't ran into the issue just yet where I've had to research away the Briar, and then I can't finish off the game with the Briar. You could play Pal Pad, you could play second Briar, but I think 1 is totally fine. And then for the ball search cards, we got 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball. For the recovery, we got 3 Night Stretcher, and then another search card in Buddy-Buddy Poffin we have 3 of. 3 rare candy as well. If you decide to cut the Dusclops, you can go up to 4 rare candy instead. 1 counter catcher, 1 feather ball, 1 prime catcher, 1 switch as well, 1 vitality band. This card is very good versus things like Iron Hands. Sometimes just randomly comes up in situations where you might be 10 short versus some Pokemon, but really comes up in the mirror match. Very good card for the mirror match. Being able to hit 230 on the Trapagos is very, very good. Then we got 3 Area 0 and then 4 double turbo energies to round out the list. I have seen some lists opt to go down to 3 and still play Colorist, but I think 4 is just fine. I just think it's really important to naturally find them off things like Pheasantipede or some of your draw supporters, because as I said, this is a deck where you got to pull off big combination turns. So being able to have the 4 is just, really nice, because you'll naturally, find them off things like Pheasantipede or Professor's Research, and then you can focus your quick search on something else, which is really important. Overall, Trapagos definitely can beat pretty much anything in the format. It's really powerful, definitely has a skill ceiling as well. So if you learn how to play the deck really, really well, you definitely can be rewarded. Trapagos, I think, deserves a spot at number 2. Alrighty, hopping into number 1 here, we have Charizard. Charizard, I think, still is overall the strongest deck in the format. It doesn't really take a whole lot of bad matchups, can pretty much beat anything, and has amazing comeback potential. Now, heading into the Dortmund Regional Championships, the deck didn't actually see a whole lot of success. And I think the reason is it was the very first event with Stellar Crown, and a lot of people were kind of overcompensating for the Charizard matchup, really trying to build their deck to beat this. I think it's what I would call new toy syndrome. I think that people, see all the brand new cards, or they see like a deck that is overall the strongest deck, and at the very beginning of the format, they do everything to beat it. And I think that heading into Louisville this weekend, I think that this deck actually makes a much stronger play, because people are going to be focusing on some of the other decks. For example, Dragapult just most recently won. People are going to be looking at how to beat Dragapult. Lugia has been seeing a lot of success. Like Terapagos also saw, you know, plenty of success as well. So I think a lot of people are going to kind of focus on other decks, and their decks aren't going to take relatively solid matchups into Charizard. Charizard pretty much does everything well. Everything that it does is well. It doesn't do anything you could say exceptionally, but it doesn't really have any flaws. You know, being able to have a 330 HP Pokemon that is able to one-shot most things in the standard format. You also have Pidgeot as well for that consistency. And you have the ability to take multiple prize cards with Dusknoir Briar package as well. Overall, this list has felt really, really good. I think that 3 Nest Ball is very important in this format as of right now, as I think you want to go first versus a lot of decks, especially against things like Dragapult and Terapagos. So I think that having a heavy ball count is really important. One of the Hisuian heavy ball as well. I used to play 4 Nest Ball, no heavy ball. However, I think that the heavy ball is really good, especially when you only play 3 Charmanders, and so much of the time you got to get that Rotom down on the very first turn, and you sometimes run into situations where you're going second and you play the Arven and your Rotom's prized. So having access to the heavy ball is great because you can, you know, choose to get the heavy ball as your item card, and you can get a Seal Stone. You can Seal Stone onto the Rotom, then get, you know, Buddy-Buddy Poffin, and you're off to the races. So overall, I think Charizard is still the strongest deck in the format. Don't sleep on it. It's still really, really good, and I definitely expect to see success forward. But anyways, that is going to do it for the video. These are my top 5 decks in the current standard format. The deck lists will be down in the description as well. Let me know what you think of this list. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. But with that being said, if you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And this is Smart TCG. I'll speak with you again soon. Peace out.